This program has been made possible in part by the following sponsors. The Trial Lawyers Association of BC. The Vancouver Courier newspaper. My new book about addictions, All the Way Home, Building Recovery That Works. Engagement is one of those popular mantras these days. Not everybody really knows what they mean when they use this word to death. And so many governments like to say that they're very engaged with people. Usually it's a kind of pea and shell game where they say, we're interested in your opinion, and fall into a deep coma as soon as you start to express it. Jak King is with the Grandview Woodlands Residents Association, and he wrote an op-ed piece along with Elizabeth Murphy. They side-by-side pieces in the Sun the other day, and he said Grandview Citizens Assembly is a sham. Good word. You shortened it from shamrock.
I did.
Yeah. Let's first of all, just so everybody knows, define the area Grandview Woodlands is.
Grandview Woodland is the area around, most people would consider it to be Commercial Drive.
Right.
From Clark to Nanaimo and Broadway down to the inlet.
Right. And Residents Association, who are we?
I'm not actually any longer. I was president of the Grandview Woodland Area Council.
Oh, did they bounce you?
No, I decided not to run this year so
Okay.
that I could be a lot more partisan as it's an election year. So.
Okay, fair enough. So what kinds of things, before we get to the city and their carry-on, what kinds of things does the Residents Association usually deal with?
Oh, anything that the residents brought to us.
Yeah.
It's... we dealt with garbage,
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
restaurants and that sort of thing, and issues of people using parks for perhaps inappropriate purposes, that kind of thing.
Yes.
We did a lot of work with the Transportation Department on traffic calming on Victoria, that kind of issue.
Yeah. Are you able to do anything about open drug dealing? That's a tough one.
No, but we have a community policing office that.
Yes.
That likes to deal with it on a verbal basis rather than a legal basis, and
Oh, really?
yeah,
Neat. It's interesting. There's interesting subtleties that go on, and I mean, it's such an interesting community.
It is.
And I think all of us, regardless of where we live, on average, probably most of us, at least once a week, make the trip to Mecca. We go down there and have
Absolutely.
a coffee, or go to Havana and have some bacon and eggs or something. So the city, much as they have in Marpole and in other communities like the West End, comes in and says, okay, we want to do some things, but we want your input, and there's a process, and it turns out that the process is bizarre. Like, you have to apply to express your opinion?
these days, yes, you do.
How do you explain that?
Well, we had the process started almost 2 years ago.
Okay.
When they issued the terms of reference for the community plan, we had a series of workshops, or really open houses, what we call yellow sticky events, which is where the planners have all the time in the world to do their presentation, and all we're allowed to do is write our comments on yellow stickies and stick them on the wall, and they then take it from there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
So we had a whole series of those for about 6 months, dealing with issues like parks and transportation, public safety, arts and culture, heritage, that kind of thing. And we were unhappy with the nature of those, simply because, as I say, there were yellow sticky exercises. It really was a one-way discussion. But then at the end of that, they went away for a couple of months, and then last June, they issued their emerging directions document, which was their draft community plan for Grandview Woodland.
Okay.
And it dealt with all those issues that we'd spent months at workshops about, for about half of the document. And the other half of the document was a very detailed land use and rezoning plan,
Yes.
which had never been discussed at any workshop anywhere at all.
Really?
With any of us.
The big item that came up months later was something that wasn't presented in the first place.
That's exactly right.
So let's be very clear about
Yeah.
that. Okay.
And there were things in there that were just simply outrageous, like 36-story towers at Commercial and Broadway,
Yes.
a big tower at Commercial and Venables, that sort of thing.
Yes.
Essentially, the complete destruction of Nanaimo Street, turning it from a single-family neighborhood into blocks everywhere from Hastings down to Broadway would be row houses and that kind of business. And so there was an immediate outrage from that.
Yes.
So much so that essentially we got the plan stopped dead, really, last summer.
Really?
Yeah.
How did you do that?
Well, there was so much outrage. We got so much media, and we had large public meetings at which everyone expressed their outrage. And I think City Council last July recognized that this was not a good thing for them. I mean, I think you have to remember that Grandview Woodland voted something like 70% for vision in the last election. And this is a vision council that had clearly made a major mistake. And I think they wanted to put a stop to it. So they told Brian Jackson, the planning director, who admitted that the process had gone completely awry.
Yes.
At several meetings we had with him, was told to sort of reset the process. And last September, he issued what's known as the Jackson Report, which dealt with all the 4 community plans that were happening at the same time, which is Marpole, Downtown East Side, West End, and us.
Yes.
And had various ideas for how those should proceed. And for Grandview Woodland, they gave us a 12-month extension, which is much longer than we wanted because it put it the other side of the election. But also came up with this idea of a citizens' assembly, which is what you were referring to, that you could apply at a sort of lottery. And for a neighborhood of 27,000 people,
You get 30 or 40
48 people.
48 people.
Were
Okay.
supposed to represent the entire.
But even before you get to that lottery, let's say 10,000 people applied, there was this bizarre profiling exercise in which people were going to be sifted through the sieves of what? Ethnicity, age,
And
left-handedness, I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly.
what?
Yeah,
What?
exactly.
Gay, straight, purple, orange?
Yeah,
I mean,
I think it's gender,
Yeah.
age, housing status, whether you're a renter or whether
Yes.
you're an owner,
Yes.
and area, because they've broken up Grandview into various areas. But you say, if 10,000 people had applied,
Yes.
I think you might be able to pull some sort of representative sample from that.
Yes.
But my understanding is that less than 500 people have actually applied.
Wow. Okay, look, for a quick point. This is, after all, the mayor who was caught on microphone saying beneath his breath or something, who the F are these people? You know, I don't want to listen to this unruly mob,
Yep.
of heathens and peons. Okay, now, I'm basically sympathetic to where you're coming from and your concerns. Let me play devil's advocate for a minute. I had coffee at Bamboo the other day at Van Ness and Joyce,
Yep.
and happened, oddly enough, to run into Adrian Dix because he lives and works there. And I've always thought that was a great area around that SkyTrain stop.
Yes, it is.
And I think it's really, whoever did it, the city, whomever, private people, I think they did a heck of a good job. And it seems like a wonderful little district. To be devil's advocate, so what if some towers are built? So you tell me what's bad about it. If towers are built, and like I have a friend who does construction, and he and his wife bought a townhouse just off Commercial Drive, and I think there's like 5 or 6 little row houses.
Right.
And they bought one. It's a good price. It would be double if it were west of McDonald.
Yep.
Right. So what's the?
Well, there are a number of issues. I mean, one is that it's really not about the towers or the building form.
Yes.
If it was, I think we would have had, a small outrage, and then people would have gotten on with it.
Yes.
The problem is with the process, and as I tried to explain before, they didn't ask our opinion about the changes that were coming, and so this is, the background to this is 6 years of non-engagement by the Vision Council, frankly. So we weren't expecting too much else. But the other issue is that Grandview Woodland, Commercial Drive, is an extraordinarily successful neighborhood.
Absolutely.
We have an enormous diversity of ethnic backgrounds, building types, rental types.
And one of the
Why
things
does it need to be changed?
And one of the things that we see in that neighborhood, my son and I often go for a walk after a bite to eat, and we'll go east from Commercial up towards Nanaimo and beyond and so on. So we'll walk along Charles or Adenac, one of those streets. The reclamation of old houses is fabulous, perhaps more so than in most districts in the city.
Yeah, fair.
There are so many beautiful old wood frame houses that have been shored up, freshly painted, new windows, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. And we have a very active heritage group in the neighborhood
Right.
that keeps a watch on that. And you're right. I mean, it's become a very popular area. There are pluses and minuses to that.
It's going more expensive as we speak.
Well, not only that, but a lot of those old houses used to be broken down into very affordable suites.
Yes.
And now they're being returned to single-family homes.
Ouch.
So you're losing a lot of those suites.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful. There's a balance.
So I'm glad we got into the subject of real estate, because I think in all of this conversation, one of the rules of journalism is to follow the money. So we have a council saying, come and talk to us, and then they ignore you and don't really let you talk. And it strikes me that whatever plans the city has are all about money. It's all about real estate and transfer. Yeah. So who, in fact, is calling the shots?
Yes, and we have...
Which developers are working the stream here?
I think we could discuss that in specific instances.
Yes.
But more generally, we have a number of real estate people, and I won't use rude names for them, who are running seminars right now saying, come and profit from the community plan. This is how we can make you millions of dollars. So,
really?
Oh, yeah. Pay $10 and come to my seminar on how to make money.
But are you having developers, I'm not going to name names, but I can think of half a dozen names right off the top, and they're all familiar to, I think, our viewers. Are you having developers saying, look, come and talk to us. We want to show you the kinds of things we're thinking, and we're open to amelioration,
Not yet. Not to us.
Yes.
I think they are certainly talking to the planning department.
Oh, I know that.
But they're not talking to the residents yet.
They're not.
No.
So it's a case of who the hell do you think you are?
Yes.
Okay. You're the Grandview Woodlands Residents Association. We'll take a little breather here, folks. Your opportunity, we want to be engaged with you, to send us a note to davidberner.com, and also an opportunity for those lovely folks who support us to say hello here on Shaw Community Television Cable 4. Back with you in just a moment. This program has been made possible in part by the following sponsors. The Trial Lawyers Association of BC. The Vancouver Courier newspaper. My new book about addictions, All the Way Home, Building Recovery That Works. If the City of Vancouver wants you to be involved in a planning process, or at least appear to be involved in a planning process, first they have to send you to school. You have to go to planning school. Our guest is Jak King from the Grandview Woodlands Residents Association. Are they kidding? I mean, why do I have to go to planning school if I have an opinion about my neighborhood?
Well, that's a very good question. One of the reasons that they have gone this route of a citizens' assembly with a very limited number of people
Yes.
is to exclude people like me and the other activists in the neighborhood who have spent many years on these issues and who do have opinions. I think they would like to get some planning virgins, and they can then indoctrinate them in the way that the planning department wants.
But who the heck do you think you are? I mean, you don't have an urban planning degree. You didn't go to Yale. You're not a developer.
That's right.
You're just some schmo who lives in the neighborhood.
I'm just some schmo who lives in the neighborhood, who knows it very well, who's studied the issues, and who has worked with a lot of residents who are very upset by this.
Yeah. So, Brian, what's his name?
Brian Jackson.
Jackson, I was going to say McDonald. Brian Jackson, the planner, he's now sort of put his grip on this a bit?
Yes, in fact, I saw a video yesterday of his talk to the Vancouver City Planning Commission,
Yes.
saying that this is one of his priorities and he wants it dealt with by spring. So, yeah, he's very much.
Let me ask you about one of the things that bothers me about that neighborhood. I think it's a beautiful neighborhood, it's a wonderful neighborhood. But for many years, I've been horrified by what happened to the TransLink station, the subway station at the corner of Broadway and Commercial. Mm-hmm. I think that was the fault of TransLink, letting people go on the honor system. And so all of the addicts and dealers who were happily downtown moved up to that station, and it became a hub of drug dealing, okay?
For a while.
For a while. Now of course, people, we're a bit more stringent about getting people to pay to get on the tube. Why do you say for a while? Is it cleaned up? Is it better?
I think it's significantly cleaned up.
Okay.
The dealers move from place to place as time
Yes.
goes on.
Yeah.
We've seen them move from various parks in the neighborhood to other parks to other.
What are you
areas.
getting? What do you get? What's your thought, and what are you getting from your fellow citizens about what would make that corner? Because it is a key corner. What would make that corner more livable? So you've got a Safeway, you've got a Shoppers Drug Mart, you've got every known brand of coffee. All the usual suspects are there.
Well, what it would make it much more livable is a significantly improved transit system. You have a situation now during rush hour, both evening and morning,
Yes.
where you'll see enormous numbers of people standing on the street waiting for 3 or 4 or 5 99 buses before they can catch one.
Really? Why? Because they're full.
Because they're full.
And they just keep going.
They say it's the busiest transportation hub in North America, is what they claim.
I didn't know
If
that.
you go onto the station, the platform is extraordinarily crowded. I'm amazed that people don't get pushed off onto the lines, frankly. And this community plan called for another 8,000 or 9,000 people
Yes.
to be plunked right there without any additional transit. It's just nonsense. So I think if you got TransLink to improve the transportation system there, remember we only have one bus going north-south, that's the 20.
Yes. And you had a problem just getting here to the studio today.
I did, yes.
Yeah. That's bizarre because apparently this system keeps winning awards, and I don't know who the people are who give it the awards because it never seemed like a great system to me.
Well, I must admit, I use transit. I don't drive.
Yes.
I use transit every day, and basically I like the
Yeah,
system.
by and
I
large,
think
it's
not
okay.
bad.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not bad. There are some issues to be dealt with, certainly.
Oh.
And historically, the way we built Vancouver was to build the tramway lines, and then development followed.
Exactly.
Somehow, we've now, under this present council, we've reversed that entirely, and they say, well, you've got to get a critical mass of people, and then we'll increase transit.
Well,
it simply doesn't make any sense.
Cambion Marine is being developed in terms of residency and so on, and stores.
Yep.
Just either today or yesterday, the Sun reported that Malcolm Brody was all excited about yet more strip malls or something going along Number 3 Road, as if they needed more of that. But anyway, they put up that all that cement and the train, and so now there's lots of stuff there. It is a kind of natural development. I think anywhere in the world where you have good transit systems, stuff grows around it.
That's right.
It makes sense. What would you see? Is it just that you need more trains and more buses on Broadway and commercial?
I think you need a complete rethink of Broadway. I'm not a supporter of the $3 billion hole in the ground at all.
Yes.
But somehow you have to improve Broadway to make it a better transit system. Maybe get the motor car off of Broadway, perhaps.
Is there something better for Commercial Drive itself, which is?
No, I think Commercial Drive is pretty good.
Yeah.
We don't have very many there's very little traffic jams.
Yes.
The buses seem to run pretty well. I think there's maybe a shortage of buses. They put the larger buses on now, so that I think that's certainly helped. Certainly, if you stand at a bus stop for 10 minutes and then 3 come along, people will complain. But generally speaking, you can get from A to B pretty well.
Speaking of Commercial Drive, one of the things that's happening all over the city, and it's something I welcome, but it is disruptive at first, is what I don't know what to call it other than the European model, where there are 4 stories and the ground are restaurants and drugstores and whatever, and then people live in apartments. You see this every Rome, Paris, blah blah blah, London. So. All over Vancouver, we're now seeing what were 1 story or 2 stories are now a whole block is torn down, and now we're getting 4 or 5 stories. You see this and/or welcome it for commercial?
You see that in the south end of commercial towards Broadway. We've got the new Marquee building, for instance, which is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
But no, I don't see it coming for a couple of reasons. But I do support that model. I think it's an excellent model.
Too disruptive?
Well, it could be, but the whole of commercial is essentially a heritage neighborhood.
Yes.
So there are issues about knocking down those old buildings.
Yes.
But there are 2 major problems, as I understand it. One is that even though they may only be 1 or 2 stories, they take up the full footprint of the lot.
Exactly.
Therefore, it's very difficult for a developer to get additional space on there.
Yeah.
You're not adding very much. The ability isn't there. And I can't remember my second point, but I will get there.
Okay. So
the other thing is that most of them were purchased by people in the 50s and 60s at a very cheap rate.
Yes.
And they now have enormous capital gains issues to deal with.
I'm sure.
And I've spoken to a lot of owners that's an issue. They might want to develop the property, but they do have capital gains issues. So I guess we have to find some sort of creative method of dealing with that.
We just have a few minutes left, Jack. Let's go back to the issue of City Hall. So you have publicly complained about this process. You wrote an excellent op-ed piece in The Sun. Here you are in this program. Is there some political action being planned? Is there some raising a voice to actually say to City Council, look, whatever it is you're thinking about, we have to be part of the process and not just some stupid dance, not some fake exercise.
Yes, there is a wonderful group, Our Community, Our Plan, which is the sort of activist residents group.
Our Community, Our Plan.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
They're working on issues, but I think last year we were hoping we might be able to work within the process. But now that they've pushed it beyond the election, I think it's now become a political issue, and all we can do now really is to change the nature of the city council in a political way.
I understand. What's the tone when you pick up the phone? What's the culture like? If someone from Our Community, Our Plan calls the planning department or city council or something, are you treated in a gentlemanly manner? Or are you treated?
You're treated very politely, and we just recently got a letter from planning where we asked, I think, 6 questions, and we got half an answer.
Half?
Yeah, maybe half an answer. If we're being generous about it,
yes,
they maybe answer half the questions. And so there's a sort of silence, really, is really what you get now.
And yet every politician in the Western world marches down the street with these placards that say, transparency.
Well, the best example I can give you of what's wrong is You may remember we had a mayor's task force on community engagement,
Yes, yes.
which issued a major plan last year.
Yes.
They didn't speak to a single community association before they wrote that report. Not a single one.
Listen, you're not alone. Out at UBC, they just had another one of these fabulous academic conferences on addictions,
Yep.
and not one recovery expert was there.
Right.
You know, I don't know what they're talking about, neurology or something, I suppose, yeah.
So our problem now is the Citizens Assembly, which sounds so good,
Yes.
to me is now just a distraction. They want people to focus on that, while the real destruction of the neighborhood happens in what we're calling sub-area planning meetings, which are completely separate from the community association, from the Citizens
We have less than
Assembly.
a minute. Are you or the Residents Association or our community, our plan, you putting your money on one particular party?
No.
No.
No, well, for me, I don't speak for anybody else.
Yes, yeah.
For me, I've written constantly about the fact the best plan for us is for there to be no majority.
Yes. I
I
think a
think
lot
it'll
of
give us
people feel
lot-
that.
A lot more leverage.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Jack.
My pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, good to see you being well.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it for us, kids. Thank you for being with us. And next week, there was a very interesting story recently about a politician having trouble getting foster children or adoptive children because he and his partner are a same-sex partner. So Karen Medeiros, the Executive Director of Adoptive Families Association of BC, will join us next week, and we'll talk about those kinds of issues. And I hope you'll be with us here on Shaw Community Television, Cable 4. Good night.